Imagine a rural household in India. A daughter grows up working on her family's land, sowing seeds, harvesting crops, contributing as much as her brothers. And yet, when the time comes to inherit the land, she is expected to set aside. For generations, this was not just a social practice, it was the law. The Hindu Succession Amendment Act of 2005 sought to change that reality. It promised daughters equal rights in ancestral property, marking a decisive shift towards gender justice. But here lies the central question. Has this legal equality actually transformed property rights for women in rural India, or does the gap between the law and lived reality still persist? Under the Hindu Succession Act 1956, the Mitakshara Kopasnari system limited inheritance rights in joint family property exclusively to male members. Daughters were excluded from Kopasnari status and consequently from birth based ownership rights. The 2005 amendment, through the substitution of Section 6, fundamentally altered this framework by recognizing daughters as co-partners by birth, granting them the right to seek partition, imposing equal rights and liabilities. This reform represents a shift towards constitutional alignment, particularly with Article 14 and 15, which guarantees equality and prohibit discrimination. In rural India, land is not just a property, it is livelihood, identity, and social security. The amendment in theory strengthened women's position. It improved economic independence, enhanced decision making power, and offered protection in cases of marital breakdown. Yet, reality tells a more complicated story. Many rural women do not claim their share. They are persuaded or pressured to relinquish it or remain unaware that such rights even exist. Customary norms often dictate that a daughter belongs to another family after marriage. So, even when the law recognizes her as an equal co-partner, society often does not. Research consistently shows that customary practices continues to dominate rural land distribution, limiting the amendment's real impact. The judiciary has played a pivotal role in clarifying the scope and application of 2005 amendment. In Prakash versus Fulavati 2016 Supreme Court judgment held that the amendment would apply only if the father was alive at the time of its enactment. Subsequently, in Dhanamma versus Amar 2018 judgment, the court adopted a divergent approach, recognizing the rights of daughters even where the father had died prior to 2005. This inconsistency was conclusively resolved in the landmark judgment of Vinita Sharma versus Prakash Sharma, the judgment of 2020. The court held that the right of a daughter to compulsory property is by birth. It is unaffected by the date of father's death and operates in a retroactive manner. This judgment represents a significant advancement in the jurisprudence of gender equality, affirming that statutory rights must be interpreted in the light of constitutional values. Notwithstanding judicial clarification, several challenges impede the effective implementation of the amendment in rural areas. First, customary practices continue to exert considerable influence, often superseding statutory provisions. Second, there exist institutional and administrative barriers, including inadequate land record system, procedural complexities, and limited access to legal remedies. Third, lack of awareness remains a significant concern, particularly among rural women who may be unaware of their legal entitlements. Fourth, socio-economic factors such as financial dependence and familial obligations often deter women from asserting their rights. Finally, the interplay between state specific land laws and personal laws has at times resulted in fragmented and inconsistent application. These factors collectively contribute to a substantial gap between legal recognition and actual enforcement. Comparative analysis reveals that several patterns are observed in other jurisdictions as well. In countries such as Nepal and several regions of sub Saharan Africa, statutory reforms have granted women equal inheritance rights. However, their implementation is frequently underdetermined by customary practices and social cultural norms. In contrast, jurisdictions with robust institutional frameworks, categorized by efficient land administration systems, legal literacy, and enforcement mechanism, have achieved more effective outcomes. This comparison underscores the principle that legal reform in isolation is inefficient to achieve substantive equality. From a critical standpoint, the 2005 amendment represents a significant normative advancement, yet its transformative potential remains constrained in practice. While the amendment successfully dismantles formal legal barriers, it does not adequately address the structural and cultural impediments that inhibit the exercise of the rights. The reform reflects a top down legislative approach premised on the assumption that legal recognition will lead to social change. However, in rural contexts, social norms and power dynamics often dictate the extent to which legal rights are exercised. Therefore, the effectiveness of the amendments must be evaluated not merely in terms of local doctrine, but in relation to its socio-economic impact and the practical enforceability. In conclusion, Hindu Succession Amendment Act 2005 constitutes a landmark step forward achieving gender equality in property rights. Nevertheless, its impact on rural property relations remains partial and uneven, owing to persistent social, cultural, institutional challenges. For the amendment to achieve its intended objectives, it is imperative to complement legal reform with enhanced legal awareness, administrative efficiency, and broader socio cultural transformation. Ultimately, the realization of gender equality requires that rights guaranteed in law are meaningfully accessible in practice. Thank you.